Even if you have an older child that's already in high school or has gone through high school, there are some changes this year. So it's kind of a good idea to take a look at what those graduation requirements look like. The state has made some changes that have forced us to make some changes locally going forward, and it begins with the class of 2028, which are your eighth graders. So if you have any questions along the way, the chat is probably the best place for those, but you could also just try to pop those out there too if you have a question, if I'm not catching on to what's in the chat. So I will get started with, if I can remember how to do all this. Yep, here we go. So hopefully you can see on the screen my transition to middle school slideshow. And welcome everybody. My transition to middle school slideshow for eighth grade students and parents. The first time I did this was actually during COVID in the spring of 2020 when we weren't sure exactly what was going on, and I felt there was a disconnect because nobody was at school at that time. So things have changed since then. And what is different in high school? Well, students will have actual graduation requirements, not just classes that they take every year. Your students will be earning credits, which is a little different than middle school. Middle school is you just keep matriculating and take the classes you got to take, and then, you promote to the next grade, and then you eventually promote to high school. But in high school, your student will accumulate credits. Those credits are recorded on a transcript, and we will have an IPS, which is an individualized plan of study that I will talk about a little bit later. We have career pathways in high school, things that kind of sort of got started in middle school with the eighth grade business class and the ag classes we have for seventh and eighth graders. And then your student is going to have to prepare for what's happening after high school. I talked to a couple of kids today that said that's their favorite conversation they have with people is, what are you going to do after high school? Well, now you can start thinking about it already. What's the same? You're still Bulldogs. Although I think Mr. Hibden doesn't like this version of the Bulldog because he says the spikes on the collar are not purple enough. So I'm sorry about that. Graduation requirements. So what are they? 1 credit is equal to a full year of class. Credits are issued in a half credit at semester. Students don't earn quarter credits. Quarters don't really, I don't want to say that quarters don't really matter in high school, but no grades are stored at quarter. It's more of like a progress report where grades are stored at the end of the whole semester in high school. Your class standing, if you have at least 5 credits at the end of a year, you are a sophomore the next year. Then you need at least 11 credits total to be a junior. Once you have 17 credits, you're considered a senior. And if you arrive at that magic number of 24 or more credits, you get to graduate as long as they're in the right areas. Any questions thus far? I'm going to pause real quick to see if I see anything in. Let me know if I'm missing some comments. Okay. Because I am not an expert at the Zooms. So we'll go on to the next page. The graduation requirements continued. So 24 credits, that's great, Mr. Poulsen, but where do they come from? Some of this reflects the changes that the state has made and what it would look like here at McLouth. Students will need 3.5, students in the class of 2028 will need 3.5 English language arts credits. They get 1 credit for each year in high school, a half credit for their senior year. You can take a 4th full year of English as the class of 2028. Some of the students that might want to think about doing that would be those that are taking college. They're taking the college classes through Highlands, so they're taking Comp 1 and Comp 2, and that would equal a full 4th year of English. It is not required to take that full 4th year going forward. Then there are 7 credits that are kind of tied up in what the state is calling STEM. science, technology, engineering, and math. Students have always needed 3 math classes, so that's not a radical change. And it must include Algebra 1 and geometry. 3 science credits must include the earth, space, science, and biology. And 1 additional credit here under the STEM umbrella, and it could be another math, another science, a computer
Sounds
course,
very
or
not.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Sorry, no.
Okay. And an additional credit of math, science, computer science, or an advanced CTE. And we'll talk about CTE here in a minute, but those are the business and ag classes. So that's all caught under 1 umbrella. In the past, the state only required 3 math and 3 science. It's going to be relatively easy for our kiddos to get this additional credit of math, science, computer science, or advanced CTE, just in the course of what they end up taking in high school. But note that it's there. They will need 3 social studies credits, including world history, American history, and government, which are all required at this time. 1 fine arts credit, 1 career tech education credit in agriculture or business, are the career tech ed pathways that we have at McLouth. 1 physical education credit, that is, a semester is going to be recorded as physical education and a semester is going to be recorded as health. The way we've taught this recently is we blend the physical education with the health. There's some health lessons that are taught throughout and some additional work that students do to complete those health standards when they're taking PE for the first time in high school. And then all students will take a semester or a 0.5 of public speaking and a 0.5 of financial literacy. Those are both their sophomore year. It has been called up to this point, that financial literacy class has been called personal finance. The state is now requiring us to call it financial literacy. So what's in a name? That leaves, to get to those 24 total credits required for graduation at McLouth, another 6.5 credits. So that's a lot of information. Any questions there?
Are there any other ones that are like the public speaking and financial literacy that are only certain years that they can take them?
That's a very good question. Not really. When it comes to the science credits, our freshmen generally, all of them take earth space science, and all of our sophomores take biology. It makes it easier. When you look at our teachers, every teacher teaches usually at least 3 different classes. And so that means every class we have is usually only offered a couple times a day. And that makes scheduling and making sure all the kids can take what they need to take kind of challenging at times. So we do have certain things that are required for certain years just to make sure that the schedules line up. So for a freshman, we want to make sure they can take their freshman English and they can take their earth space science and their world history class. For sophomores, that means they're going to be taking their biology class, their sophomore English class, and they're going to have that public speaking, financial literacy will be during the same hour of the day. They'll just flip-flop semesters. So half the kids take public speaking in the fall, and then they'll take financial literacy in the spring. But other than the social studies courses and those first 2 science, and then the way the English credits line up, those are the only other ones. So there's a lot of flexibility. The board, in their wisdom, made that PE credit flexible, so it didn't have to happen their freshman year. It just can happen whenever the kids can work it in. We have a lot of kids obviously want to take PE all 4 years, and some of them it's like the last thing they want to do. So they have some flexibility there. But that's a good question. Okay. So I threw out these other graduation plans. These are just things to keep in mind. What I showed you was the McLouth plan. This is going to help you meet what the state requires and what the board requires locally for McLouth. But there's also this Board of Regents qualified admissions. Here after the slideshow, I'm going to show you what that looks like. This has changed a lot over the years. There used to be some specific coursework that students had to take to meet qualified admissions. They have done away. The Board of Regents is kind of the governing body for the state universities. And they've done away with specific requirements for classes for qualified admissions. I don't know that they'll bring them back someday, possibly, But the qualified admissions right now has a lot to do with GPAs and or scores on standardized tests. Like I said, we'll review that at the end of the slideshow. But it is a guaranteed admission to any of those 6 state schools. That would be, this is a quiz for me: K-State, KU, Fort Hays State, Pitt State, Wichita State, and Emporia State. Washburn usually follows the same kind of rules, but they're not a state school. They're actually a city of Topeka school, but they generally kind of follow along as well. Private schools or independent schools are can kind of have their own requirements. So you kind of have to check with those when your kiddo gets of age and they want to think about going to college. And then there's also a Kansas Scholars Curriculum, which is also on that same sheet that talks about qualified admissions. This is for students that, think they want to go to a university or college right after high school. It's a more rigorous course of study. They're required to definitely take 4 math classes. They're required to take some foreign language. And if a student wants to be able to possibly qualify to for the Kansas State Scholarship, they would have to take the Scholars Curriculum. That is on that same piece of paper that talks about the Board of Regents qualified admissions. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute. Okay. I transferred all the qualified admissions. Look at that. The qualified admissions, like I said, it used to have to do with what coursework you took in high school. Now they're strictly looking for a GPA or a GPA and an ACT. So for Emporia, Pitt, Fort Hays State, and Wichita State, they just want a cumulative high school GPA of a 2.25 or higher, or 21 on the ACT. It's either or of those things. They also do require, all of these schools require that if you take college credit in high school, that would be like those comp classes from Highland, or even if you take some independent college coursework on your own, like we have a lot of students take like general psych, they want you to have a 2.0 or a C average on your college credit that you took in high school for qualified admissions. K-State and KU, the bar is a little bit higher. K-State requires a ACT of 21 plus or a GPA of 3.25. KU and K-State are test optional, but that test can help you get into the school. So KU's is a 21 plus there, and they want to see a 21 plus with a cum GPA of 2.0, or your GPA is 3.25 plus. And I'll talk about GPA here in a minute if it's been a while and you haven't had to figure that out. Any questions so far? So I talked about transcripts, and most of you probably remember what these are, but this might be new to some of you, and it might be new to some students who might be lurking in the background. A transcript is your record of your academic history. It's going to have your grades, your grade point average, different test scores get included on there, and even activities you're involved in high school. Your GPA, your grade point average, McLouth uses an unweighted 4.0 scale. So that means for every unit of A you get a 4. For every unit of B you get a 3. For every unit of C, a 2, and so on. And then we basically just average that. So in a year, every student, you'll have 14 data points from your freshman year because you take 7 classes, and each semester gets its own kind of like data point. So if you have a semester of A, that's 1A. And it's a simple average. We add up all those numbers and we divide it. If you got a straight A average, you got a 4.0. If you're a straight B, it's a 3. If you split A's and B's, you've got a 3.5. It's pretty easy to figure. And if students need to see that at some point, they can always ask me, or they can ask somebody else in the office, because we can easily access without them having to do the math. Transcripts are used by colleges, universities, the military, and some employers. We have people call all the time that graduated from McLouth. We even had somebody earlier this year that graduated in the 70s, and they were looking for their transcript. And so this is something we have to keep as a school into perpetuity because we don't know when someone's going to need it. There's sometimes people switch jobs, or sometimes people decide they're going to go back to college or get some more training and they need their transcript. One thing I want to add, that will be recorded, we haven't quite figured out exactly how this is going to be recorded, but with the class of 2028, and this is a change, students are going to need to complete 2 what are called post-secondary assets, and those will be recorded on your transcript. And there'll be some more information on that to come as they get into high school. But there's a right now, this is a requirement from the state that's changing. And right now, that's been pretty open-ended the way we understand it. But I'm sure as this goes into action, we're going to get more guidance from the State Department of Education. Post-secondary assets can be something as simple as a student achieving like a college readiness score on the ACT, or they had a part-time job in high school, or I believe 2 sports will count if you do 2 semesters or 2 different sports when you're in high school. And that could just be going out for football twice would count as a post-secondary asset. So there will be some more guidance on that going forward. Just know that that is going to be something that your student needs. Most students are not going to have a problem with that. Being part of a club will count as a post-secondary asset. If you go to Washburn Tech and you get a certificate in welding, that's a post-secondary asset. There's going to be a lot of things that are in that, and we will make sure to communicate that going forward. I feel like I'm spewing a lot of information, so if there's some more questions, please let me know. I didn't realize I couldn't see the chat from here, so if there's anything in there that I'm missing, let me know. And I will definitely address those questions at the end too. So I mentioned earlier individual plans of study. All students in McLouth High School will work with me and their advisory teacher to create what is called their individual plan of study. It is it's not just a document, but we do start out with a Google document where they're able to kind of track and write down their plan for the classes they're going to take during high school to make sure that they can get the courses they want in before they graduate. So some of the things they put on there are the courses that they want to take in high school, maybe what their post-secondary plans are, what happens when I graduate. We will do some interest surveys and skills assessments when they're in high school, so they can get a sense of what they're good at or what they might like to do. I do see something in the good question. I'll get to that question about the university class in high school in just a second. They can take interest surveys and skills assessments, and then we have something called Zello that the students will use some. They've used it a little bit in middle school, but they'll have a lot more familiarity with that in high school. Zello is an online platform that we subscribe to, and the students kind of create their plan. It's what has a lot of these interest surveys in them. They can research colleges, they can research jobs, they can research training programs, they can look into the military. It's a really good resource that they have available to think about and to kind of explore and play around with what they want to do when they graduate. And I did have a question in the chat about qualifying to take a university class when they're in high school. It's really relatively easy for students to enroll in community college classes as long as they're a high school student and they're of good standing. We have a lot of kids that enroll, and I can kind of lead you in the direction for that. We don't actually enroll the students, obviously, like unless we help them out with the Highland classes that we offer as part of our coursework. And that would be Comp 1 and Comp 2, their senior year in English, and college algebra. But some students decide they want to take extra coursework in high school. And when they get to be juniors and seniors, they will have the opportunity to take what is called independent college coursework. That's what we call it in our schedule. And where they have an hour that they can work on a college class. And I've helped point kids. A lot of kids just decide to do that through Highland because they're already enrolling and through Highland for the other things like college algebra. Some students have had luck enrolling through Johnson County or KCK or other schools. And it's really I would caution trying to do too much at once because it's a lot of kids run into, wow, this is harder than I thought, and especially online is harder than I thought. But we do have kids with some success. Like I said, college, or what is it? General psychology is probably the most popular class that students take. Um, some students we have a young lady who is a published author who did some children's literature and adolescent literature classes and some creative writing classes that were college level when she was in high school. She is now at Emporia State University. So I don't know if I answered that question, but it is, I will tell you, this is what I tell the kids too when they're like, I don't know how to schedule like a visit to a college campus. Colleges want you to be there, and community colleges make it really easy okay, good. Community colleges make it really easy to enroll in their classes because they definitely want you there and they want to help you out and they want to get you what you need. Okay, next page. So pathways is another thing I mentioned. Pathways are what they're called at the state level. These are vocational plans of study. We have pathways in agriculture and business. We actually have 5 different pathways. And if I'm quizzing myself right now, let's see if I can remember all of them. There's an ag power and mechanics pathway that includes like our welding classes and ag mech. We have the animal science pathway that's listed as the example at the bottom of this page, which involves like animal science and animal health vet tech classes. We have a foods pathway. That's not exactly the whole name for it, and a horticulture pathway. Those are the classes that Mrs. Umfenauer teaches, and that's why we're building that beautiful greenhouse. I'm very excited to see that thing go up. And we have a business management and entrepreneurship pathway. And students are not required to complete a pathway in high school, but they are required to take some courses. They have to take at least one, and an advanced, a technical level, which you see down at the bottom. The example of technical level would be agri-science or animal science. A technical level course, actually it's the application level course, would be one of the things that meets that STEM requirement. So that would include welding 2, animal health vet tech, or agcom. Anything above those levels would meet that 7th STEM course requirement if they didn't want to take another math or science. If they want to be a pathway completer, which you get a certificate, it's something that you can kind of brag about on your resume someday or when you're applying to colleges. Students have to take at least 3 courses from a pathway, including one at the introductory level, at least one at the technical level, and one at the application level. And 3 of those need to be taken in high school. So you can see from my example, a lot of your students are probably taking at least 1 ag class this year in 8th grade, if not 2. That counts as your introductory level, but since it wasn't in high school, you need to get at least 3 more. So that would include, for this example, a student decides to take agri-science as a freshman, animal science, maybe their sophomore year, and then before they graduate, they're going to take animal health and vet tech, and then they can be a pathway completer. They get a nice certificate. Mrs. Hendrickson is very good at helping students through that process. Another question. There is a course handbook, Brent. Very good question. I was going to point that out at the end, but there is a course handbook. It is available on the school website. And I'll direct you to that, I think, really soon here. So there's our career pathways. How'd I do? I got business management and entrepreneurship, food products and processing systems, power structural and technical systems. I guess I called it power and ag mech, animal science and plant systems. And we have the things you want to look at for preparation for post-high school success. Number of students. There are a lot of universities and colleges that since COVID have moved away a little bit from requiring an ACT. Like I mentioned right now, KU is totally test optional. You can use the test to help you get in, but you don't have to have a test at all, even for scholarships. But the ACT, please note that that will be available for free for your students when they are juniors in high school. There's a state-sponsored test that we give at McLouth generally in February of their junior year. They can take one time for free. I would recommend students, if they are considering the ACT, take it a couple of times, but just note that that one will be free and information will go out their junior year for that. ACT also has a lot of good stuff on their website just about college in general. Washburn Tech is an option for students. Some of you that might have older sons and daughters, maybe they went to Washburn Tech. There are a number of programs. I would direct you to washburntech.edu to check some of those out. We have students that study anything from childcare to diesel technology to cosmetology. We have a student that's a senior this year that's competing in a regional competition for, I don't know what the official name is, but she's doing nails and she's competing in a regional competition and she is representing well. Military service is something we always have recruiters come in during lunch, during high school lunch. So if students are interested or think they might want to pursue a career in the military, they'll have plenty of opportunity to speak with those recruiters. Highland Community College concurrent classes are the ones I mentioned, the comp classes for English their senior year and their college algebra and independent study college courses, which I think we've also talked about some. So I think, yes. So Brent, here you go. The course handbook is going to be available at McLouth.org and there'll be like a secondary tab. You'll go under secondary guidance counselor class registration information. There's a whole bunch of what I've gone through tonight. There's some charts and graphs and just pictures of what this stuff looks like to help you and Reese and all your other students out there navigate and figure out what they're doing. I wonder if I can go there right now. Hey, look, I can. So I go to secondary, school counselor, class registration information, and right there, the very first thing that pops up, I've updated this information as of this year. You'll see McLouth High School course descriptions, and it takes you to, here you go. And what's listed at the top is the grad requirements through the class of 2027. If I go back, you'll see grad requirements here. It's going to list side by side what the class of 2028 will need to do. And that includes, that's you guys. That's the 8th graders this year. But back to that course description handbook, classes that are required are marked with an R. And it just kind of, it gives you little paragraphs, little explanations for what each course is, and especially for some of the electives when you get in. You can see our math teachers were really verbose when they wrote about they've got like one sentence per math. But it describes what some of the different science classes are, if you're interested in those things, the difference between our PE courses, fine arts, foreign language. So like choir, what's the difference between theater and forensics? So that's a good thing to check out and kind of review and look at with your student. And I think the other things I want to point out, I included this in the email, and if you didn't get it, please let me know. I sent 2 emails today, one with the information to get into this Zoom, and the other one was some handouts. This was one of the handouts. This is from the Kansas Board of Regents. This is the same information I went through talking about how to get into KU, how to get into K-State, how to get into ESU, PSU, etc. And the Kansas Scholars Curriculum, which I didn't go into details about. But you can see there, 1 unit is equivalent to 1 year or 2 semesters. It talks about the things that you have to do to meet the Kansas Scholars Curriculum. And right now, probably the trickiest part for our kiddos is getting foreign language, as we haven't had a teacher in-house, but we do offer foreign language as an online course. Students need to have 2 units of the same foreign language. So we generally have students take Spanish. We did have one young lady who graduated last year who took 2 years of Latin. Sign language even counts, but they have to be 2 years of the same language. And we do have options online for that. The other thing that kind of catches some of our students up is It says 3 units of science, which is the same as our high school requirement, but these 3 units are biology, chemistry, and physics. So your student's going to end up taking at least an extra year of science to get that physics in. Um, there's some more information. This actually has a link to the Kansas Scholars Program. This is completing the coursework is the first jump through a hoop to be able to apply for the Kansas State Scholarship. The next thing is in the spring of a student's senior year, I send to KBOR, the Board of Regents, a list of our kids who have met the requirements for the scholars curriculum. And I send them their GPA, their requirements, and their ACT score. And then I get sent back a list of kids who qualified as Kansas State scholars then, which are just the top of the top that have done this. And those students then can then apply. It's not guaranteed they can apply for the Kansas State Scholarship, which is a renewable scholarship. I believe the last time I looked at it, it was $1,000 a year that's renewable. And I think I had one other thing I definitely want to go through, and then we can talk about any other questions you might have. See if I can get up here, maybe. There it goes. Oh, come on. Of course, I have to sign back in. I'm going to show you what the students will be doing later this week when we register for classes. They're not going to see all this. This is what Mr. Polson sees. But they will see, we're going to preview the student registration screen. When a student logs into PowerSchool, or actually when they log in with their parent, they should see the same screen. They will see a button over here on the left-hand side that says class registration. Once they click on that, they're going to get this screen that says, welcome to the McLouth High School class registration system. And they will walk through each of these things. The first thing is freshman required math. Over on the right side of the page, you will see red exclamation points next to a tiny little icon of a pencil. They will click on that tiny little icon of a pencil, and they will select a course. So some of our students, and this is something you might want to talk with your kids about, do they want to start with pre-algebra? They feel like they're ready to rock and roll with Algebra 1. So I'm going to just select the Algebra 1. You'll notice that exclamation point turns to a check mark. It's when I know I've done what I need to do, and I click OK. You will notice the credits in the middle here show as a 0.5. That's because every class, when I enroll students, you enroll in a semester and it's linked to a second semester. So it's not going to show one full credit, but it is a full credit. That's just a PowerSchool quirk. So I click OK. I got a green check mark over here, and I can see that my Algebra 1 is right there. I'll move on to the next, the freshman required course. So what do we have to take as freshmen? We have to take all three of these: Earth Space Science, Freshman English, and World History. And I click OK. And then the electives. This is where it gets interesting. So now I look at my electives. I have 2 pages. There's not much on page 2, but I do have 2 pages. You'll notice physical conditioning, for some reason, has a big course description listed right here on the page, and maybe we can get every class to do that in the future. But they will have these classes to choose from. They want to continue their agriculture career, they'll say that. Maybe I'm a band student, I want to do that. And you know what, Mr. Polson, I want to get buff in high school, so I'm taking physical conditioning 1. So I've selected my 3 courses. I'm going to click OK. I get another green check mark. And the whole while in the middle of the page, I can see what I've selected so far. And then I'm going to look at my alternates. Alternates are just what they say. If for some reason the schedule doesn't work, for freshmen, the schedule usually does work. But sometimes for the older kids, the schedule, just because of conflicts, there can be some trouble. I need people to put in a couple alternates in case they don't get their first choices. So I'm going to say, well, as an alternate, I'll do entrepreneurship. And if I can't do physical conditioning, I'll do lifetime fitness. And I'll click OK. There's a question. Forensics shows 0 credit. That's something that I haven't been able to fix, but forensics is credit. You can count on that. It counts as a credit. And we can look at that being a public speaking requirement going forward, but right now we have all our sophomores required to take public speaking. That forensics would just be like an additional speech credit. And the reason it's showing, I think I figured out why it's showing as 0. I haven't figured out how to fix it yet, but I'm working on it. We put rosters together for our coaches. So we have like a softball class in Power School that's not actually a class. Kids don't get credit for it. And forensics is the same way. So Ms. Higby, who's the forensics coach, can see who's in her forensics squad, and she can check their grades and make sure that they're eligible, if that makes sense. Additional, and then down at the very bottom, this additional request, there's absolutely nothing there. Power School automatically throws that up. So I can see that I require at least 3.5. I'm requesting 3.5. The students, not on my preview screen, but the students, once they're done, they'll see a little blue button down in the bottom right-hand corner underneath all those check marks that says submit. Once they do that, that means it stores their selections, their course selections in Power School. And once they're stored in Power School, then I can start scheduling them for next year. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this and see if we have any other questions. It's hard for me to, I know it sounds like I like to talk a lot, but it's hard for me to talk that much without, if there's anything else that pops up, let me know. I try to be thorough, but I know sometimes this can be a little overwhelming. Any other questions? Any funny jokes? I put 2 jokes on the yes, pre-algebra is a whole year course, and it does count. I'm going to move this since I'm not sharing a screen anymore, and then I don't look like I'm totally looking off to the side. Pre-algebra Pre-algebra is a whole year course, and it does count for one of the 3 math credits. So it does count as a high school credit. It's not like in college, if you have to take the class below college algebra or whatever, you don't get credit for it, but you have to take it to get into college algebra. It's not like that at all. They get a credit for that math class. Pre-algebra just wouldn't count if a student is trying to do the Kansas Scholars curriculum. It wouldn't count as one of their 4 math classes. And enrollment goes live. Actually, I'll tell you, it's live right now. You should be able to see it. I hope. Sometimes there's little hiccups, and if you can't see it tonight, I will get that fixed tomorrow. Because there's a lot of steps we have to do in Power School to set it up to make sure that students can enroll. And sometimes 8th graders have a couple extra clicks we have to do, but it will definitely be live later this week when I speak with your students in it'll be in Mrs. Ebert's class in their language arts class. So we'll do that, and then it will be open for a while. So we'll go over it in class. Some of the same stuff I went over here. We'll go over that in class, and then we'll keep it open over the weekend into next week. So if they can come home and you want to talk to them about things or discuss what they chose or totally veto what they chose, you can do that. Any other questions? I definitely take funny jokes too. I put a couple up on the screen in the lunchroom every day for lunch. So I know Reese is there. Reese, how are my jokes?
No.
How are my jokes, Reese?
He loves them.
Okay, good to know.
Got it. But first you'll have to
Oh.
unlock your device.
Man, Google thinks I'm talking to it. I'm not. If there's addicted to soap, that is a good one. I think I used that one earlier this year, though. That's always a good one. If there's no other questions for now, I will probably wrap up. But if you do think of something, please reach out, call the school. I'm happy to talk anytime. I try to answer my email in a timely fashion. I get lots of emails, you can imagine. And happy to help any way. Come up by the school too if you want to. I'm happy to sit down and talk through things if there's still stuff that you want some clarification on. But appreciate you being here. I am going to get this uploaded and I will send a link out to everybody. I'll probably post a link so anybody can come watch it if they want to. And I will not edit for content and all my uhs. So, you get to see me in all my glory. All right. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming out and take care.